afternoon. You may be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for returning in a timely fashion. We are back on the record. Daisy, you're still on oath?
Yes, sir.
All right. You're on exhibit number 131.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Your readings right before lunch, before the break, you're looking at State's Exhibit 131. Is that the same disc I'm showing you now?
Yes, ma'am. It has my initials.
And you were able to verify that that is a phone call from August 4th, 2016 from the secure system that is regularly kept in the regular course of business there at the jail?
Yes, ma'am. That's
All right,
correct.
this time State Tender State's Exhibit 131.
Ms. Sampson, whose witness is this under? Any objection, Sampson?
Your Honor, I will stand on our earlier motion.
All right. I will overrule the objection and allow it to be published to the jury if you wish.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we approach?
Sure you can. Come on up, Lord. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there may or may not be a transcript handed out, but a recording has been admitted in evidence, and there's also been a transcript of that recording, and it is a recording, not a transcript, which constitutes evidence in this trial. You, the jury, must determine for yourselves what was said on the recording, or any discrepancies between the recording and the transcript, or to be resolved in favor of the recording. With that instruction, Mr. Doolittle, you may continue if you wish.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I hand out the transcripts? Or hand them to the deputy to hand out?
You may ask Deputy Garrett to hand them out.
Deputy Garrett, would you mind?
Now, are you going to play a portion of the DVD that is not on the transcript?
Yes, Your Honor. Do you want me to wait then?
No. Well, let's Deputy Garrett go ahead and pass out the transcript and just hold on to it. That way he would not have to interrupt you or the recording. All right, Mr. Miller, you may proceed now. The first portion may not be on the transcript.
Correct, Your Honor.
Hello, this is a free call from. Did you know that you can visit with your loved ones remotely from your home, office, or anywhere equipped with a PC, internet access, and a webcam? Sign up today by going to www.securitech.net/video visitation. That's www.securtech.net/video visitation. An inmate at a Carroll County jail. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. Please assist the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office in preventing jail suicide by reporting any mental health concerns immediately to our staff at 404-298-8515. For all other health-related concerns, please call 404-298-8525 to leave a confidential message that will be picked up within 24 hours. Video visitation offers an easy and convenient way to visit from anywhere you have internet access on your Android or Apple smartphone, tablet, or computer. Download the Securus Video. To accept this free call, press 1. To refuse this free call, press 2. If you would like to permanently block your number from receiving calls from this facility, press 6. Thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now. How are you, honey?
Well.
Major Aiken, you discussed earlier that at the beginning of each call you told the jury that there is a recorded announcement at the beginning. Is that what you're referring to, what we just heard?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay. And does that go up in every call?
Yes, ma'am. Every
And
call.
are both parties able to hear that, meaning the caller from the jail and the recipient that they're calling, that plays on both ends of the phone line?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay. Could Could you go ahead and play the next portion?
I got a short story to tell you. Yesterday, there's a Mexican out here that I'm really friendly with, and he happened to go to court yesterday morning with me. So they put us together, and we go in the bus. Now, they keep us separate from everybody else, right? And so all the guys are in the back of the bus, and then at the front of the bus, like near where the officers sit, there's a cage, basically like the separate section. So all the guys are in the back, and then they lock it, and then they have one row of benches for us, and then they have another, like divider with the lock, and then the officers, right? So then they call that the cage. So we're like in the cage. It's like, one row for people that need to be kept separate. So they put us in the cage with this guy. Well, he doesn't have a normal uniform. He has a paper uniform.
A paper?
Yes, paper.
Okay.
It's like a paper kind of thing that will just tear apart if you try to do anything with it. And the reason why they have paper uniforms is for people that try to commit suicide, so they don't like try to choke themselves with their uniforms, or they might stuff their uniforms into the toilet to try to, overflow it, flood the dorms, things like that, right? So this is paper uniforms. When we were standing together, getting ready to go on the bus, let me put it this way, we could smell him as he was coming like from 15 feet away, because he probably hasn't taken a shower in like a month.
Oh, wow.
His hair was like all over the place. It was a black guy. His hair was like all over the place. And then he started talking crazy things to us on the bus. So then the Mexican guy says, he started to say as we're driving towards the court, I said, I'm getting a headache because the smell was like really bad. And this guy is talking to me, he's talking to me, because that doesn't really understand what I'm saying, but he's talking to me and he's telling me about margaritas and all sorts of, he just started going off the wall. So at one point I took that charge of him saying, I say, and smash that number and say, think about this. If I win my case, Lord willing, he's the kind of guy I'm going to be with. So he looked at me and he said, and you want to bring your case?
Oh, gosh.
So I told my lawyers, I said, well, better to have that for a few years than to have all these gangbangers and hard criminals for the rest of my life. So.
Yeah, I know.
So the questions I have now.
All right, Deputy Gary, would you gather up those documents, please? You can just lay it right there in front of the court board. All right, Ms. Sampson, you may cross-examine if you wish.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Can you tell us again the date of that recording? August. I just went blank. It was in August, and I want to say the 12th. I have it it's on the paperwork, but I just don't personally remember right this second.
Is it on the recording? No.
Are you asking me if it's on the recording?
Okay. But it's halfway through this month, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Lawyers, may this witness be released and excused from subpoena? Do you want her to remain on the subpoena?
She can be released, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, ma'am, free to go.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good afternoon. Go ahead, next witness.
State calls Dr. Jerome Brickhouse to the stand.
Go ahead and have a seat for me. Go ahead and raise your right hand. You solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you shall give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
William Jerome Brickhouse.
And Dr. Brickhouse, where are you employed?
I'm employed as Director of Mental Health at the Cobb County Jail.
And what are your duties and responsibilities? What do you do as Director of Mental Health at the DeKalb County Jail?
We manage mental health services for all of the individuals that come into the jail from intake to discharge. I have 30 staff that work for me, including nurses, social workers, and psychiatrists.
How long have you been in that position in the DeKalb County Jail?
Next month it'll be 15 years.
Were you working in that role in January 2011?
Yes.
And you've been in that role continuously since?
Yes.
What's your educational background?
I have a PhD from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln in clinical psychology, a minor in psychology and law.
And how long have you worked in the field of clinical psychology?
35 years.
All right. I made you do the math.
Yeah. Since 1980.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me do that.
All right. As part of your training experience, have you had the opportunity to evaluate individuals for mental health concerns or mental health issues?
Yes, I have.
And what part of your job involves screening people or evaluating people for mental illnesses?
At the jail specifically?
Yes, sir.
Well, there are a set of systems in place, and starting with intake, so we have a screening process and intake. The screening process and intake can serve to alert us to a person having particular needs, or it can alert us to needing to maybe follow up on something. And then we have a series, following that, we have a series of ways that we can schedule people to be seen. And everybody who comes into the jail is screened both medically and mental health.
Why is that?
We're an accredited facility, so it's part of standards and accreditation, excuse me, both in terms of National Commission on Correctional Health Care and ACA, American Correctional Association. So we actually pride ourselves on being accredited, meeting standards, providing services that meet community standards.
I want to direct your attention. Now, do you have any role in screening people for physical issues?
No, there's a medical vendor that does the screening for medical, and then there's a vendor for mental health, and we have a vendor for dental services. So we have those three areas covered by specialties in a particular area. So we have a specialty for mental health, we have the specialty for medical services, and then we have the specialty for dental services.
Okay. And is it selective who's evaluated for mental health services coming into the jail? Do you pick people who you think might need it, or is that a screen for everybody who comes in?
Screen for everybody.
Why is that?
The CAV jail's like Grady Hospital. You don't know what you're getting coming in the back door. So it's important that everybody be screened. People come in, they've been doing drugs, they might be angry, the whole gamut. And so the screening is part of helping us to know what we might need to do. It's also a part of helping to provide some management for individuals that come into the jail. Usually when people get locked up, they don't like it. So we do what we can to help with the whole transition.
Okay. All right. And what the kind of screen you talk about doing for people who are coming into the jail, the intake screen, is that different from a forensic evaluation of somebody for criminal responsibility, for example?
Yes, parts of it is different from that, because it's not it's not meant to answer certain questions that would come about in terms of a forensic evaluation. It's a basic screening. So, for instance, there are certain alerts on it. A person might alert that they have suicidal thoughts, or it might alert that they've taken psychotropic medication, or it might alert that they've recently lost a family member. So that gives us a way to take a look at that. All of those get triaged, meaning they all get reviewed. And then based on the review, we will schedule people to be followed up. And we do that within certain timelines. A more acute situation, we're going to see that same day. Something that's not as acute, we're going to see within 72 hours or less.
And are the two the intake screen you talked about, the forensic examination or evaluation that I asked you a question about, are both of those things different at all from treating somebody in an outpatient basis who has a mental illness or a mental condition?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
If you were treating somebody as their psychologist or their counselor, if you were treating someone in that way, would you evaluate them differently, give them tests or anything else that's different from what you do with somebody who's coming into the jail for the first time?
In some cases, yes, some cases, no. Our basic screening is standard for the business, so in that respect, there's really no difference. If I were to see some of these individuals out in the community, we would have pretty much the same conversation as far as introduction and what have you, yes. It's the same business, just a different location.
Different location? Okay. And Dr. Brickhouse, have you been qualified as an expert in the field of forensic psychology or clinical psychology at all in the state of Georgia?
Yes, I have in the past.
In the past? How many times in the past?
In Georgia, less than 12. In Massachusetts, about 20 or 25 times.
Did you spend a good part of your career in Massachusetts?
I was Director of Psychological Services for the Massachusetts Department of Correction for 8 years. I did my internship there. I'm licensed in Georgia and Massachusetts presently.
Okay. And beyond those two states, have you ever been qualified as an expert or tendered as an expert or testified as an expert in any other state?
No, just Georgia and Massachusetts.
Georgia and Massachusetts, all right. Your Honor, at this time, I tender Dr. Brickhouse as an expert in the field of forensic psychology.
Any objection? He's admitted as an expert in this field.
All right, thank you. Dr. Brickhouse, in your employment with the DeKalb County Jail, have you ever had any contact with the defendant, Mr. Neuman?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, please, about the first time you had any contact with the defendant, Mr. Neuman?
The first time I had contact with him was in January 2011. The reason for the contact was we had triaged one of the intakes, and based on that triage that pertained to Mr. Neuman, we made a decision to follow up and see him for further questioning.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Dr. Brickhouse, I'm going to show you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit number 132, and I'm going to ask if you recognize what that is.
Yes.
And how do you recognize Exhibit 132?
It's one of our standard mental status clinical note forms that we use as a part of the interview.
Is that a one-page document or a two-page document?
This is a one-page document.
Is the exhibit I gave you a one-page document or a two-page document?
The exhibit you gave me is a two-page document.
Is there another document attached to it?
Yes.
And do you recognize that second page of State's Exhibit 132?
Yes.
And how do you recognize the second page of State's Exhibit number 132?
The second page is a progress note based on the interview that was done on January 6th with Mr. Neuman and Ms. Pugh.
Who's Ms. Pugh?
She accompanied me when we did the interview. She was the mental health administrator, my number 2 in command.
Okay. And the paperwork you have there in front of you, is that associated with the intake process or with the intake screening that you explained to the jury you do with every defendant, or I'm sorry, every inmate that comes into the DeKalb County Jail?
Well, this is step 2. What's not here is his intake screening form, which we reviewed, which based on that review served as a reason for why we went ahead and did
The reason
this.
for why you went ahead and did that.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I tender State's Exhibit Number 132 into evidence. It is part of the stipulated documents, I believe, Defense 4.
Any objection, 132?
No objection.
All right, 132 is a mere objection. You may publish to the jury if you wish.
Thank you. Could we please publish that, January? Dr. Brickhouse, may I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
All right. Dr. Brickhouse, I'm going to give you the pointer and ask if you could stand and explain the form that we're looking at to the jurors and help us identify the information that's on here.
This is a copy, so there are some problems seeing it. But the MSE means mental status examination and clinical note. The clinical note is actually the second page to the document. This is a checkoff form, basically, and
Is it easier to see on the copy you've got in front of you than it is? All right.
But here you have mood, affect, and you have a series of categories here that range from appropriate, angry, euphoric, restricted, flat, liable, depressed, sad, other. That's what's across here. For Mr. Newman, we checked off appropriate, which means that none of the other things were going on. His affect was within normal limits. The next category is sleep. He denied any sleep problems. The choices are denied sleep, excessive sleep, nightmares, sleep loss. The next item is appetite.
Before you move on, can you remind the jurors, what's the date that this document was filled out?
Yes, we start with name, date of birth, SPIN number, date and time. So the date here is January 6, 2011 at 10:35 a.m. in the morning.
Okay, and is that the time that, was this a physical interview with the defendant? Somebody was asking questions and then writing down his answers?
Yes, it was one-on-one.
And you were there?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead. And so at that time, January 6, 2011, when you asked the defendant about sleeping problems, he denied any problem at all?
He denied.
Okay. And that's for that period of time, right?
Yes.
All right. You didn't ask him about a history of sleep problems. Oh, how do you phrase the question?
I should say why it is we decided to see him.
Please do.
We decided to see him because on the intake screening form, there was a notation that was made suggesting that he might present with some suicidal thoughts or risks.
And was that based on information he provided to whomever he spoke with first?
Yes.
Okay. And is that why you decided to
Yes,
continue
that's
on
right.
with this form? Okay.
Yes. So that was the initial rationale for our meeting. So we were looking to get a better understanding of that. It was his first time in jail, and so that can present certain risks as well as what he had said, so we wanted to check that out.
Okay.
So we next have psychomotor activity. I went to sleep. Psychomotor activity is basically a way to take a look at how a person is presenting with respect to their bodily activity. Again, he was within normal limits. He did not show any agitation in his physical presentations or motor skills.
Dr. Brickhouse, when you're asking him these questions, what are you looking for? Are you looking for anything in particular, or are you looking for red flags as something that you can follow up on, or something to monitor, or something to keep an eye out for?
Well, at the time of the initial contact, we're basically looking for anything that's going to present itself and be reason for concern or an alert. So for us initially, because there was indication about the suicide potential in reports, we took a look at that as our primary. And because it's a mental status, we're going to, from there, spread the circle out and explore some other areas. So we talked about a variety of things, which I'll mention because it's actually captured in the note.
Okay, good. All right. Let me ask you, with regard to these, to the boxes and what we're looking at here on the screen, was there anything that the defendant indicated to you that was of concern, of further concern beyond his self-report of potential suicide attempt some weeks before?
No. And as we proceeded with the interview, these notations basically confirm what we actually ended up writing in the progress note. His facial expressions were within normal limits.
Is that what that notation WNL means, within
Yes.
normal limits?
Within normal limits.
Okay.
That's
That means it's appropriate to whatever's going on?
Yes. He wasn't showing any anger. He wasn't showing, avoids eye contact. He had good eye contact. He, serious, other, expressionless. So no, he was engaging as you would expect, given that it was the first meeting and we were talking. But it was within normal limits. He was oriented for person, place, time, situation, date, and time. Memory was good in terms of recent memory, long-term memory. And I can explain how we got to some of this when I turn to page 2.
Okay.
Because there's some content that he spoke to which provides documentation. And his insight was good. He knew why he was in jail. He knew what the charges were. His thought content was within normal limits. He was not delusional. He didn't show any concern for hypochondriasis, thought insertion, no poor concentration, no paranoid ideation, no excessive religiosity. He was not phobic. He didn't show any signs of racing thoughts. There were no hallucinations, audio, video, visual.
Any of the rest of the categories there remarkable?
Right. So intelligence was average to above average. He denied any homicidal, and he denied any suicidal. So when we get down to here, plan is PRN. PRN means we're going to follow him as needed.
Okay.
And we determined that he was not a threat to security. So that was the checkoff sheet.
Can you go to the second page, please, Mr. Moore? Dr. Brickhouse, that second page of the document you're holding, does it memorialize in any way the conversation you had with the defendant on January 6, 2011?
Yes, we wrote it up and put it in his medical record along with.
All right, you can go ahead and retake your seat there, and it's there for the jury. Can you explain for the jury what it is you recall about that conversation? What the defendant told you specifically?
He cooperated with the interview without difficulty. We explained to him the purpose and reason for us meeting with him. We explained to him the reason and purpose for why it was we were meeting with him.
Did it appear he understood?
Yes.
Okay.
And we specifically brought up that his intake screening had indicated a checkoff for potential suicidal ideation. We shared with him the limitations of confidentiality. We explained to him that we were neutral parties. The information that we collected would be put in his medical record, and that it was only discoverable through subpoena.
And that limited confidentiality, why was it that you explained that to him?
Well, we explain that to everybody who comes into the jail, and it's an ethical requirement. The circumstances, well, basically it's confidential. HIPAA applies, so nobody's going to have access to an individual's medical records in the jail.
And when you say HIPAA, does that refer to the federal law that protects people's private medical
Yes.
Personal information?
Yes.
Okay, so that's subject to, you're subject to that there at the jail?
Yes, exactly. And so we explain that to individuals.
Did he ask you questions about confidentiality in particular?
Yes, he asked whether or not the information was going to be confidential, and that's what led us
what prompted you? Okay.
to explain to him in what context it would be. He said he understood.
Okay.
And we spent a good 40, 45 minutes exploring the concerns that we had. We spoke about the endorsement about suicidality. He talked about it. He shared the circumstance where he had been in Florida with his daughter, and he talked about the fact that he was contemplating drowning himself, is the way he described it. He said he had changed his mind. He said he was not presently suicidal. He referenced his religious beliefs and said that that in some respects was also an anchor point for him, and dismissed that he was actually acutely a suicide risk individual.
Let me ask you, in your conversation with the defendant, and he's describing, is he volunteering the information about what he calls a suicide attempt in December, or a few weeks prior to his arrest?
Yes, he volunteered that.
During that conversation, did he say anything to you about seeing a demon during this period of time?
No.
Did he say anything about a demon commanding him or encouraging him to commit suicide during this time?
No.
Did he say anything about hearing voices at this time, telling him to do things, telling him to hurt himself or anything else?
No. In fact, he denied it. On the checkoff sheet, that's one of the areas that we inquired, and he denied.
Did the defendant give a reason why he was suicidal or had suicidal thoughts a few weeks prior to his arrest?
He referenced the nature of the charge, that he had a charge of
Does the
murder against
report
him.
there in front of you give a quote from the defendant? Can we pull that up, please, Mr. Moore? Does that reference the quote, I'm sorry, Dr. Brickhouse?
Third paragraph, inmate reports he did contemplate suicide 2 weeks ago when in Florida. I swam about 60 yards out into the ocean and the fresh scar hadn't healed. I was cold and I thought I could just drown myself, but then I thought about my 17-year-old daughter being there, having to identify my body, so I swam back. Inmate reports no previous attempts or contemplation of suicide prior to 2 weeks ago. We asked, and he said no. He says, per inmate, I just got the call from the investigator about the evidence and something about the car, and I just wanted to end it all then and not put my family through this.
So he told you in January 2011 that the reason he contemplated suicide a few weeks before was because the police called him?
Yes.
He was concerned about the charges?
Yes.
No demons, no voices? Is that right? No demons and no voices?
No demons, no voices.
Okay. Did the defendant tell you anything about his family? Did you ask? Did he volunteer? What information did you get in this interview about the defendant's family?
He mentioned that he was married. He mentioned, and I want to say 20, 22 years, something in that vicinity.
Something, a long-term marriage?
He mentioned that he had 3 children, and in fact, the 17-year-old was with him in Florida by his own report.
That's what he reported to you?
Right.
Okay. Did he describe his children in any way, their ages, anything like that? Is that referenced in your report? Perhaps
They were older. Reports he has children, 17-year-old and twins, 20-year-old boys, a boy and a girl. Yes, Hemy reports he has been married 22 years, but indicated he had separated in October. Quote, I left the house.
Dr. Brickhouse, did he tell you about any other children that you didn't write about in your report?
No.
Did he tell you about any smaller children, a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, anything like that?
No.
Thank you. Anything else in your note or at the conclusion of your conversation with the defendant on January 6, 2011? Did you have any concerns about his then mental state?
None whatsoever.
Did he present to you with any symptoms of serious mental illness at that time?
No.
What was your plan for the defendant and his time in the jail after your conversation with him on January 6, 2011?
If I may,
Yes, sir.
A is the assessment, so that gives you, that was our bottom line. Inmate denies suicidal and homicidal ideation, appears to have good insight about arrest and has a legal team, possibly hired attorney, via mother, definitely a public defender. Inmate does not exhibit any abnormal or psychotic thoughts. Inmate is future-oriented and positively engaged in his own life. Mood appears stable, no acute distress noted. This is inmate's first incarceration. He reports he is concerned about my family and the victim's family, quote unquote. However, he has not had contact with his wife. Inmate inquired about documentation of session being utilized in case. Writer and Dr. Brickhouse informed inmate it is for mental health assessments and not for legal proceedings. This is inmate's first incarceration. He reports no issues or concerns in the pod. Pod is translated in housing area. That's what pod is. So he has no concerns in the housing area with peers. He says, I just want to know the rules, unquote. He was informed how to notify security if an emergency arises, and he needed mental health services. If no emergency, he was directed to complete a self-referral form for mental health. We took steps to inform the officer about his complaint about the toilet not working. We also instructed the officer to provide him with a handbook. And we note that mental health will follow up PRN. As I said before, PRN is our term for as needed, meaning if he represented again. And we were going to refer to the medical department regarding medical procedure follow-up in terms of him referencing a scar that he had had.
Okay, and do you recollect that that was related to some abdominal surgery he had in December or soon before a few weeks before his arrest?
Yeah, he had mentioned it during the interview, so.
Okay. Was there anything about that that caused you concern about the defendant's mental state at that time?
No, his mental state was fine.
Okay. What was the next contact, if any, you had with the defendant after this initial interview with him?
I had contact with him, let's see, this was January.
January 2011?
2011.
Okay.
I next had contact with him in March of 2011. I had received a call from a jail administrator who was asking a question about whether or not...
Don't just tell me what anybody told you, okay? After receiving that call, what, if anything, did you do?
I went to see Mr. Neuman, and I asked him some questions. I asked him specifically whether or not he was at risk for suicide. He denied. I agreed that he was not at risk. There was no presentation to suggest otherwise.
Okay.
I documented that, and that was the end of that contact.
Okay. Anything about your contact with the defendant in March 2011 that caused you concern about his mental state?
None.
Okay. You said that you talked to him specifically about suicidal thoughts. Did he express that he was having any suicidal thoughts at that time?
He denied.
Okay. Did you notice anything about his demeanor or his behavior that made you think that he was suffering the symptoms of a serious mental illness?
No, his affect was fine. He did not show any signs of depression. He had adapted to being in the jail the last several months.
Okay. And at this point, the defendant is not in... Is there an area in the jail that is for people who are experiencing acute psychiatric symptoms or acute mental illnesses?
Yes.
And how's that known? What's that referred to?
We have 3A, which is a psychiatric stabilization unit, and we have 3 Southwest, which is considered special housing for individuals who have mental health problems such that they could not be housed in general population.
And are those areas in the jail only for people who have mental health problems, or are they for other individuals who, for one reason or another, need to be segregated from other populations in the jail?
They're primarily for individuals who have mental health problems.
Mental health problems. And in January 2011, was the defendant in either one of those units?
No, he was in general population.
In March 2011, was the defendant in either one of those units?
He was in general population.
Okay. What, if any, was your next contact with the defendant after this March 2011 conversation?
In October of 2011, we received a telephone referral from an officer on the floor. Well, technically, we received two referrals. We received one from the officer on the floor, which is a telephone referral. And unbeknownst to us, at the same time, Mr. Newman also submitted a sick call slip to mental health. The sick call slip came the following day.
Okay, so those were two ways on the same day the defendant let your department know that he wanted to see you.
Yes.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Dr. Brickhouse, I'm showing you what has already been marked as State's Exhibit number 133. Do you recognize State's Exhibit number 133?
Yes, this is the telephone referral form.
That's what you were just speaking about to us in
Yes.
October 2011? Hey, before we get to that, October 2011, did you know at the time that in September 2011, Dr. Adriana Flores had interviewed and evaluated the defendant there at the jail?
I can't say that I knew that specifically. I knew he was subject to, that he was undergoing evaluation from outside sources.
Okay. But that was prior to you seeing him in October 2011?
I don't know the exact timeline for the evaluations that
Okay.
were done outside.
And the document there in front of you, State's Exhibit number 133. Your Honor, at this time, State's Exhibit number 133 has already been stipulated into evidence as Defense Exhibit A and B. Is that correct?
That's correct. Objection.
I'd ask to move it into evidence, Your Honor.
All right. She has no objection. Without objection, we publish it if you wish.
Thank you. Can we see State's Exhibit number 130? Thank you. Dr. Brickhouse, what is it that we're looking at here in the exhibit?
This is a telephone referral form. We have, there are a couple of ways for individuals to reach mental health. One of the ways that they can reach mental health is they can tell the officer something's going on. The officer is trained to call that referral into mental health. We document the referral on this referral form, and then we assign a staff person to go see the individual from where the call is made.
And what's the date that the defendant notified jail personnel that he needed a referral or he wanted a referral to mental health?
This referral came in on October 12th, 2011. The time noted is 12:40 p.m. in the afternoon. The form is set up, if I may, just to...
Yes, sir.
We list at the form DOA, which is the date of arrival. It gives us information about when the individual arrived to the jail. Charges are listed next. It tells us what the person is charged with. Then we have the particulars. So we have the date of referral, we have time, we have the name of the inmate, date of birth, SPIN number. If I may, on SPIN numbers.
Yes, sir.
SPIN numbers are like Social Security numbers. Because people can have the same name, we always list SPIN numbers because it gives us a way to check on that individual and not confuse them with somebody else. And then location, and then referred by, which lists the officer who made the referral. And then we have reason for referral, which states what it is that the person said when they made the call. And then the next is who records it.
Dr. Brickhouse, does that form indicate that the defendant asked for you by name?
Well, it does, yes. I mean, under reason for referral, the officer called stating the inmate said that it is urgent that he speaks with Dr. Brickhouse.
Okay. So did you see the defendant on October 12, 2011? Do you recall?
No, I was not at work that day, so the call was picked up by the on-call person, Ms. McMullen.
And per your review of the records, was the defendant seen by someone other than you on October 12, 2011?
Yes, Ms. McMullen went to go see him.
Okay. And was there any action that was taken as a result of that?
Yes, she wrote up a progress note and put that in his medical record. And on the next day when I came in and we had a sick call slip, we basically put the two together. I talked to Ms. McMullen about her contact the day prior.
All right. And then did you do anything yourself with regard to Mr. Neumann on the next day, October 13th, 2011?
Yes, I made the decision to go see him since he had specifically asked to see me. I knew what Ms. McMullen had decided the day before, and I made the decision to go see him and to check to make sure everything was okay.
Okay. And where was the defendant when you saw him?
He was in protective custody.
He was in protective custody at that time?
Yes, the next day.
Okay. And was that based upon his conversation or his report to your colleague the day before?
Yes, given what he had said to her, she made the recommendation to confer with security and to have him relocated for reasons of safety.
For safety? Okay. When you saw him the next day on the 13th of October, did he reiterate what it was, that concern that prompted jail personnel and staff to put him in protective custody?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
He said a couple of things. He said that initially he said he was okay with the relocation. He said he was feeling safe. We talked about that. We talked about his adjustment because at this point it was 9 months that he had been in jail. We talked about the culture.
The culture of the jail?
Culture of the jail, the culture of living in a housing area with other individuals. We talked about him being a minority in the jail, both in terms of racial and in terms of race and his religion. And we talked about the fact that he'd never been in jail before. There's a learning curve. I was prepared to leave him in protective custody. In protective custody, you have a single cell. You do not have a cellmate. You get to rotate alone, so there are not other people out at the time that you are out. But before the interview ended, he brought up a subject of suicide.
Had you asked him about suicide at that point?
No, I had not.
Had your conversation to that point been about his preferred housing location or where he wanted to move or where it was considered a good idea for him to move in the jail?
That was the purpose for my visit. And because Ms. McMullen had, in my opinion, resolved the situation the day before, my expectation was that my visit was just going to be confirmatory.
Okay.
But he brought up the subject of suicide risk, and when he did that, the interview continued.
Okay, well, what did he tell you about suicide risk, what did he report to you in October 2011?
Well, I would call them soft signs. And what I mean by that is he talked about having a plan. He talked about having made preparation.
Preparation for what?
Killing himself.
Okay.
He talked about the materials he had for the plan.
What was his plan?
His plan involved razors, and he stated that he knew where to cut himself such that he could die before anybody got to him.
Okay.
And based on that conversation, I had security check his room. He delivered up the razors.
He provided them. Did he actually have razors?
He actually had razors.
More than one?
He had 5, I think.
Okay.
He gave security the razors. I conferred with staff just in terms of what would be the best thing to do as far as managing him and keeping him safe. We made the decision to relocate him. Even though he was in protective custody, he still had access to certain things in protective custody that I didn't feel comfortable with.
Things like razors?
Things like razors.
Okay.
And I talked with Mr. Newman about the fact that I could relocate him to a different spot and that we could keep an eye on him.
What was the different spot you were thinking of?
The different spot is 3A.
Okay, that's the psychiatric?
The psychiatric stabilization unit.
Okay.
And I made the decision to move him there because it's staffed 24/7 by security and mental health nursing staff. Plus, it's a single cell, and he'd have a chance to be safe. He'd have all his privileges. And we could make that decision and go from there.
All right. Did you take his vocalization of thoughts of suicide, did you take it seriously?
No, but it doesn't matter. Ethically, I have an obligation to make the decisions that are going to keep people safe.
Okay.
And there doesn't cost us anything to be cautious and to check things out and go slow. So whether it was manipulative or not, I couldn't really make that determination. So the thing to do is to relocate him and I'll observe him and go forward from there.
All right. Your conversation with the defendant on the 13th of October, the way you described it, did you talk about anything else? Or would it be documented there, perhaps on the second page of State's Exhibit number 133?
There are. The last question you asked me, the mental health examiner left, the mental health evaluation left this examiner with the impression that Mr. Neuman is beginning to experience an adjustment reaction to his incarceration. I referenced to the fact that he had come in on January 4th. I mentioned the events related to his charge. There were things going on in the housing area because there's TVs and people can see the news and all of that was going on. And there had been a recent change in the scheduled start of his trial. So he referenced that there was a change, that there was a postponement. He referenced that there were going to be some other evaluations.
That's what the defendant told you?
Mm-hmm.
The defendant tell you anything else about the facts of the charges that he was facing at that time?
Well, I knew from just my own sources that that he had made a declared statement in terms of his legal defense.
Okay.
And that it was going to involve his mental health status.
Okay.
So, to finish this part, this paragraph speaks to the adjustment to jail and his reaction to it. And his reaction to what was going on in the jail, in my view, was appropriate and consistent with not only the experience he had, but with other folks. He's a minority in a predominantly African-American setting, so there are different dynamics. He had never been in jail before, so that's a particular dynamic. And we were talking about these things and what would be, the best way to go forward. At the time, we had no idea as to how long the trial was going to be and those particular issues. I was concerned that even though he was not, in my view, acutely at risk at this point in time, there were a number of other events going on that might have a negative impact.
Okay.
So I wanted to play it safe.
All right. And in your conversation with him in October 2011, did he say anything to you about angels?
No.
Did he say anything to you about demons?
No.
Did he say anything to you about hearing voices?
No.
Did he say anything when he's describing his thoughts about suicide that he was commanded to do it? Demon told him to do it. He was experiencing those sort of audio or visual hallucinations?
No, he never had any discussion with me about command hallucinations. There was never any finding to support command hallucinations. No evidence of command hallucinations at all.
Okay. All right, so you told the jury that after this conversation with Mr. Neumann, you transferred him to 3A for you to be able to observe him for a period of time. How long did the defendant stay there?
He was there for 3 months.
3 months?
Yes.
Okay, so October 2011 till January 2012?
January 12th, January 13th, something like that.
Sometime like that? Okay. And in that time, did you have an opportunity to observe the defendant yourself?
Oh, yes.
All right, and how often would you see him while he was there?
I make rounds on 3A every day. On average, I would have a conversation with Mr. Neumann approximately twice a week, mostly status checks. How are you? Any adjustment issues? Any complaints? The process is set up such that every individual on that floor is monitored by nursing staff. So the nursing staff keeps shift notes. I would review those, take a look at what's in the notes, take a look at the psychiatric assessment piece. And since he was not there for psychiatric purposes, he was there for what we call special housing purposes. So he was not subject to psychiatric evaluation because he wasn't there for psychiatric reasons. But even with that being said, everyone that's on the floor still gets monitored by the nursing staff. They still do rounds, they still chart, because they're on that floor and they're our responsibility.
Dr. Brickhouse, during that 3-month period when you said you saw the defendant almost every day, did you observe any symptoms of mental illness in him?
None.
During that time, did the staff that you supervised who were watching the defendant in this special unit, did they observe any signs of mental illness from the defendant?
No, they did not.
Okay. And so what, at the end of that period of time, did you, if anything, decide to do as far as the defendant's housing?
Well, in January, let me back up. In December, Mr. Neumann and I were having conversations about me moving him back to general population. We hadn't seen any presentations about suicide risk during the time he was on 3A. He's on no medication. He did not ask to be put on any medication. He showed no signs of psychiatric disturbance. He had access to phones, commissary, reading materials. In our view, he was completely normal the whole time he was on a unit. And the discussions we had also involved the fact that his legal case was getting ready to proceed, and he wanted to go back to general population so that he could be in a better position to meet with and handle his legal business.
All right. Dr. Brickhouse, may I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Dr. Brickhouse, I'm showing you what has been marked as State's Exhibit number 134. Do you recognize?
134?
Yes, sir. Do you recognize State's Exhibit number 134?
Yes.
And, Your Honor, State's Exhibit number 134 is part of the stipulated documents already admitted into evidence identified as Defense Exhibit 4A and B. I move to tender State's Exhibit 134 into evidence at this time.
Any objection, 134? All right, 134 will be admitted without objection. You may publish it to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been going about an hour with the assistant of Deputy Garrett. He's going to give you a 10-minute script break. Deputy Garrett, have him back in the box in 10 minutes. All rise.